Think the rich in the 1970s started their day with champagne and caviar? Or did they keep it simple with something like French toast? From decadent dishes to indulgent spreads, the wealthy of the 70s started their mornings in ways that might surprise you. Starting off with Eggs Benedict. This meal screams luxury and indulgence. If you wanted to show off your wealth in the 20th century, you didn't need to buy expensive bags or jewelry, but just order Eggs Benedict for breakfast. That'll show them just how rich you actually are. Just imagine those silky poached eggs draped in hollandaise sauce laying on top of an English muffin. And right there, laying next to them, are strips of crispy bacon. That right there is a dream breakfast. That's a dream breakfast. It sparks feelings beyond words. It's the perfect combination of elegance and tradition. You'll feel like you're dining at the Ritz, even though you're sitting in your local diner. Back in the day, Eggs Benedict divided people into two groups, the cereal crowd and the large breakfast lovers. But you don't devour Benedict's eggs, you savor them, enjoying every bite. Nothing says, "I am living the American dream," quite like eating eggs dripping gold, or at least golden butter sauce. To be brutally honest, it isn't easy to pull off Eggs Benedict. Poaching them is something I could never master. And the hollandaise sauce isn't a joke either. But for those rich enough to master it, or to pay someone else, Eggs Benedict was an everyday specialty and the ultimate breakfast. Rich in flavor and in life, plus a bit over the top. Just like the people who ate it. Moving on to the second dish, croissants with jam. They weren't just a go-to breakfast in France in the 1970s, but also in the United States. Oh, just imagine starting your day with a freshly baked buttery croissant that is so light it could be blown away with just one windstroke. This was the morning choice of the elite, American and Parisian. I bet the French will have a bit of a problem with that statement, but oh well. It's their fault they make such darn good pastries. But why have scrambled eggs when you can have bites of heaven for breakfast every day? Back in the 70s, croissants weren't as widely spread in the United States as they are today. If you craved a croissant, you'd likely go to a high-end restaurant in a hotel or a cafe. The 70s were an era where French cuisine started making its way into the American lifestyle. Croissants and jam were a perfect blend of sophistication and simplicity. Whether the jam was apricot, strawberry, or raspberry, it could make the simple act of eating a croissant a religious experience. But nothing says, "I made it," quite like having international pastry that costs more than your lunch. Smoked salmon bagels, picture this. A perfectly toasted bagel, warm and soft on the inside and crispy on the outside. Cream cheese is generously spread on the bagel. My mouth just started watering. But that's not the end. Layered on top is a silky salmon. Add a bit of seasoning, lemon zest, and thinly sliced onions, and suddenly you're not only having breakfast, but you're eating in style. For me, the magic had stopped once the salmon got involved, but I guess for some people, this is a true delicacy. Back in the 1970s, this was a staple for the elite of New York and beyond. I mean, what better way to flaunt your wealth than to eat fish on a bagel for breakfast? I mean, who could say that they were having seafood with their morning bagels? Nobody. Except for the rich. This is one of those indulgent meals, but with a touch of class, without being over the top. Plus, it was rare back in the day, which probably made people who could afford salmon feel fancy even if they were still in their pajamas. Now everyone is familiar with this one, and it may even be someone's favorite. French toast. It's fancy enough to order in a high-end restaurant, but simple enough to whip up at home. Back in the 70s, it was a go-to breakfast meal for the rich. If they were to make it themselves, who doesn't love French toast, rich or poor? Those crispy, eggy, buttery, golden slices of heaven. What's not to love? That eggy bread was all I ate at one point in my childhood, and let me tell you, they could replace not only lunch but dinner also. No, let me rephrase that. They could replace any other meal during the day. That's how good they are. Of course, I do not recommend doing this. Eat a salad once in a while. The best part about French toast is that it could be a sweet base for breakfast, but also salty. From syrup and strawberries to butter and yellow cheese, this eggy bread could go with anything. And French toast wasn't all about eating, it was about leaving an impression. The wealthy wanted their regular bread out and their fancy bread in. By fancy, I mean covered in eggs and fried to the gods. While we're on the topic of eggs, let's not forget to mention the omelette with herbs and cheese. The wealthy really couldn't just have plain eggs, could they? Everything had to be herby, with special creams and cheeses. Wow, how rich! I can just imagine the housewives making this for their hungry husbands with a big smile on their faces as she sprinkles the herbs and adds the cheese to the meal, which is no longer a regular meal, but a sophisticated experience. Parsley, chives, or basil weren't just random herbs. They were the herbs, the ones that were irreplaceable, and without whom the eggs would just be eggs. On top of that, the richer the cheese, the higher the status. It didn't matter whether it was Gruyere, cheddar, or brie. If it was melting on top, no one asked questions. Let's forget about the eggs for a second and move on to fruit salad with yogurt. This breakfast screamed health and wellness. The rise of the health movement was at its peak at the time, and fresh fruit salads were in. Fruit salad with yogurt became the ultimate power breakfast, offering a good source of protein. This was the era of exotic fruits, so forget your plain old apples and bananas, and welcome to the papaya and kiwi show. In the 70s, fruit wasn't just food. It was a lifestyle. You not only ate fruits and yogurt, you lived and breathed them. If you put those colorful bowls of cherries, melons, and berries in front of yourself, you could basically call yourself a nutritionist. Add to that some yogurt, and you could say that you were having dessert for breakfast. The more exotic the fruit, the more it seemed like people at the time were living in some tropical country rather than the United States. Health and fitness fanatics all across America went crazy for this diet and embraced fruit salads like they were going to guarantee them eternal youth. Not all people were health-crazed, but some pretended to be. It was stylish and fun, so I guess not a lot has changed since the 70s. But whether you were actually health-conscious or a fake, a fruit salad with yogurt was going to keep you fresh and fed. For a more concrete breakfast meal, people often chose breakfast burritos. In the 70s and 80s, fine dining evolved in California, popularizing this dish across the country. Not everyone wants to make burritos themselves. It is kind of exhausting, especially if you don't know how to roll them properly. But if you're interested in trying, here is how. You need, well, tortillas, then 4 eggs and some cheese. The best option would be the Mexican blend, and salsa and avocados for serving. What you want to do is scramble the eggs and mix them with cheese, then fill the tortilla up with the cheese mix and serve with salsa and avocado. It sounds delicious, don't you think? I only have one little flaw I would like to point out. Where is the meat? You're telling me I am supposed to eat my salty breakfast without meat? Those rich people must have had all that money cloud their judgment because breakfast without meat? What even is that? If I had anything to say, I would add some chicken breast to the mix, but maybe that's just me. Let's get baking. Chala bread. One of the essential elements of Judaism, perhaps the most universally known and beloved, is challah bread. It's a traditional Jewish braided bread that has been a staple of family gatherings and the centerpiece of the weekly Shabbat table and many holidays. We now know of challah as a sweet bread that is ripped apart before it even hits the surface of the table. But it wasn't always like that. Biblically, challah was the portion of bread given to the Kohen or priest. This weekly ritual was usually conducted by women who were the ones baking the bread, and it involved throwing a piece of dough into the fire. In medieval times, challah was a simple, plain loaf of bread. The braiding only started in the 15th century in Austria and southern Germany. Braids also symbolized the Sabbath bride's hair. The wealthier you were, the more strands you could have, a result of having more time, expertise, and domestic help. Challah was completely transformed in the United States. Everything got bigger and sweeter. Jews who came to America discovered a variety of new, cheap ingredients. In Europe, bread and sugar were quite expensive, so they had black bread all week, except on Shabbat, when they had white braided. But in America, you could have a white sweet loaf every day. Chala paired with berries, powdered sugar, or honey made it a true delicacy. It was served at high-end restaurants, and it was truly like fireworks exploded in your mouth. While we're on the topic of something sweet, we must mention pancakes with berries. In the 1970s, pancakes got themselves a bit of an upgrade. People were bored of plain old butter and syrup, so they got creative with them. Adding various fruits, like different types of berries, nuts, or whipped cream, pancakes became like a blank canvas of cooking. They weren't like a stack of carbs waiting to make you fat. They were statement pieces. People in the 70s realized that breakfast could be indulgent and healthy, though their definition of health might differ. Fresh fruits and nuts added to the sophistication of the dish, making each bite a little celebration. Little pancakes with fresh berries and nuts were the perfect blend of classic and traditional, alongside new and modern. Breakfast quiche, the brunch dish that screams the words fancy and effortless. It's a breakfast that is indulgent and makes you feel like you're feasting on something gourmet, even though it's literally just a pie for breakfast. Imagine a buttery crust over a rich filling, filled with gourmet ingredients like smoked salmon, spinach, or even truffle oil if you're feeling extra posh. Breakfast quiche is a dish that can be served at sophisticated parties and in your own kitchen. Is it breakfast? Is it lunch? Does it even matter? It's one of those dishes where you can throw just about anything in, and somehow it always turns out like you slaved away for hours. This is why quiche became a favorite for the brunching elite, especially in the 1970s, when it went from being a French classic to an American brunch staple and hosting a brunch without quiche. That's like throwing a party without champagne. It's just something you don't do. With fillings like bacon and cheddar to caramelized onions and goat cheese, quiche is proof that even breakfast can have a touch of elegance and a whole lot of cheese. Scones with clotted cream. Now that's a breakfast that gives posh with every bite. You break it open and generously spread a thick layer of clotted cream, like a mix of butter and something even richer. Then comes the jam, sweet and fruity, to top off this morning's masterpiece. If you're feeling extra refined, you pair it with a steaming cup of tea because naturally this isn't just breakfast, it's an experience. Scones with clotted cream have long been favorites at fancy breakfasts in high-end restaurants, afternoon teas, or any occasion where you want to cosplay like British royalty for the day. Back in the 1970s, when the wealthy in America were obsessed with European delicacies, this dish became a go-to for brunches and gatherings. Light yet indulgent, it's the kind of breakfast that makes you feel a bit more civilized even if you're sneaking bites in your pajamas. Now this is something I could snack on. Breakfast tacos. Now that's a morning meal with swagger. Born in Texas and California, they're the delicious product of American and Mexican cuisines. Imagine beginning your day with a warm tortilla stuffed with scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, gooey cheese, and maybe a bit of spicy salsa to wake up your taste buds. They're portable and packed with flavor, making them the breakfast of choice for anyone who's too busy to sit down with a fork and knife. Or maybe they're just too cool. Back in the 1970s, as food trucks and taco stands started popping up in the streets of Austin and Los Angeles, breakfast tacos and other similar food became an instant hit, symbolizing the fusion of two cultures. Texans claim they've perfected the art, adding everything from chorizo to avocado, while Californians argue they've got the balance of flavors just right. Either way, this dish was and still is the perfect breakfast on the go. With every bite, you're getting a taste of two culinary worlds combined, making breakfast tacos an international experience. And the best part? You can eat with one hand and sip your coffee with the other. Did you want efficiency and good flavor? You've got yourself a breakfast taco. Even though it was sold at food stands, often associated with low-cost meals today, these tacos were anything but that. They were rich in everything, from flavor to the types of crowds they gathered. Avocado toast. quite possibly the most Instagrammable breakfast of all time. But back in the day, it wasn't just a trendy plate you would take pictures of and brag about, it was the poster child for gourmet healthy eating. When I hear of avocado toast, I know exactly what to imagine. Those pictures are burned into my brain forever. A thick, rustic bread toasted to perfection. Then on top, a creamy green avocado, almost always topped with a sprinkle of sea salt, a dash of chili flakes, or even a poached egg if the cook is truly pretentious. It's the kind of breakfast that makes you feel healthy just by looking at it. In the 1970s, before it became the staple of hipster cafes, avocado toast was seen as a symbol of the new wave of eating clean and fresh. Avocados, with their superfood status, were making their way into American kitchens and homes, and pairing them with toast was the perfect blend of simplicity and sophistication. I never thought mashing up fruit on bread could make you feel both gourmet and healthy at the same time. Fast forward to today, and it's still a favorite, partially because of the health craze and partially because it has become an aesthetic. Whether you like your avocados bland or you pile on the extras, one thing's for sure: avocado toast is here to stay, reminding us that sometimes the simplest things really are the best. Wos Rancheros, the breakfast that makes you feel like you're on a mini vacation in Mexico. As Mexican cuisine gained popularity in upscale breakfast dining during the 1970s, this dish became vastly popular thanks to its bold and intense flavors. It wasn't just about plain eggs anymore. Wos Rancheros introduced a whole new range of flavors: fried eggs, spicy salsa, warm tortillas, and toppings like beans, avocado, and cheese. I mean, who could say no to that? I know who: me. I seriously don't know how people have stomachs for this. Are they made out of iron? I truly don't understand how someone can eat something so spicy first thing in the morning. Don't get me wrong, I'm envious, but I guess not everyone can be God's favorite. For those tired of the usual bacon, eggs, and toast, Wos Rancheros offered something new and different. It packed a little surprise with every bite, delivering a mix of savory, spicy, and fresh ingredients. Suddenly, breakfast wasn't just a meal. It was an adventure to the South. With a balance of crispy tortillas, runny eggs, and spicy salsa, it was the perfect way to mix up the morning routine. In a time when people craved more excitement at the table, Wos Rancheros came and delivered. It was filling, flavorful, and had just the right kick to wake you up in style. And by that, I don't mean running to the bathroom. Whether at home or at a trendy brunch, it became the go-to for anyone wanting to start the day with a splash of flavors. Steak and eggs, a breakfast that's essentially more suited for lunch given its hearty status. This high-protein powerhouse is the classic American meal that's been fueling morning people for decades. A thick, juicy steak sizzling on the grill, paired with perfectly fried eggs, their yolks just waiting to be popped. This isn't just breakfast. It's a declaration of strength and stamina. The kind of meal that says, I'm ready to tackle whatever the day throws at me. In the 1970s, as health-conscious campaigns were taking off, steak and eggs stood tall as the unapologetic carnivore's choice. Sure, some people had their granola, but the ones having steak and eggs? They were getting ready to conquer mountains, or at least the boardroom. Packed with protein, this meal was a favorite of athletes, bodybuilders, and anyone who believed in starting the day with a plate full of iron, literally and figuratively. I mean, you wouldn't catch me slandering granola any other day, but this breakfast dish really takes the cake. There's something iconic about it, a little rustic, a little indulgent, and all American. Whether you're prepping for a marathon or just trying to survive yet another Monday, steak and eggs give you the energy to take it all on, one hearty bite at a time. Cottage cheese with pineapple, a breakfast that screams, I'm healthy, but I still have a bit of a sweet tooth. In the 1970s, when high-protein, low-fat food trends were booming, this combo became the go-to for those looking to stay lean without sacrificing flavor. Picture this: creamy, tangy cottage cheese paired with the sweet, juicy bite of pineapple. It's like a tropical vacation is happening right there in your mouth, but with the added bonus of making you feel virtuous. Back then, cottage cheese was the darling of health-conscious eaters, packed with protein but light on calories. Pair it with pineapple, and suddenly you've got a refreshing dish that feels indulgent, even though it's really not. It became the poster child for clean eating, a snack that felt wholesome but had just enough sweetness to keep you coming back for more. But be careful. It's so addictive you might find yourself going back for more without realizing it. And that isn't really skinny of you, now is it? Sure, it wasn't as flashy as an Eggs Benedict or a towering stack of pancakes, but for the health set, cottage cheese with pineapple was breakfast, or lunch, perfection. Whether you loved it or pretended to love it for the sake of your waistline, it was a staple of the era's high-protein craze, reminding us all that sometimes simple really is all you need. Muesli. The breakfast that says, I'm healthy, I'm classy, and I've got Swiss roots. Originally from Switzerland, muesli was the kind of dish that looked humble but had serious nutritional value. In a world of sweet and creamy pancakes and fatty bacon, muesli was the sophisticated European breakfast option, combining oats, nuts, seeds, and dried fruit, all soaked in milk or yogurt. It was a breakfast that showed it could be simple with a pinch of elegance. In the 1970s, as the world became more health-conscious, or health-obsessed, dare I say, muesli found its way onto the breakfast tables of those who wanted to eat clean and stay lean. Forget sugary cereals filled with additives. This was the real deal, packed with fiber, protein, and all other goodies that made your body feel thankful for what you put into it. But don't be fooled by its minimalist look. You could toss in fresh fruit, a drizzle of honey, or even a sprinkle of cinnamon to add a little spice. Now, that's what I am talking about. As you can see by now, I am not a big fan of strong breakfasts. I would much rather enjoy a simple breakfast of oatmeal or muesli. It wasn't just breakfast. It was a way to start the day feeling like a champ who already made a smart, classy choice for their body. So, shakshuka is a bold and flavorful dish that took over brunch cafes in a blink of an eye. It originated from North Africa and the Middle East. This tomato-based meal, with perfectly poached eggs nestled in spicy sauce, took the brunch world by storm. It has very strong flavors, from spicy to sweet and savory. Toss in some peppers, onions, cumin, and paprika, and you've got yourself a dish that will wake up your taste buds in a matter of seconds. I mean, for me, this is a full-on lunch. Onions, cumin, and paprika for breakfast? That's wild. In the 1970s, as people began to crave more international flavors, shakshuka found its way into trendy brunch spots and quickly became people's favorite. It's hearty, yet healthy, with vibrant spices and colors that make it a feast for the eyes and for the stomach. Pair it with some crusty bread to soak up all that rich, tangy goodness, and you've got a breakfast that feels like a culinary adventure without even leaving your table. Don't get me wrong, it sounds delicious, but damn, I would be running to the toilet from taking the first bite. Whether you're in a bustling cafe or cooking it up at home, shakshuka is the dish that proves that breakfast can be simple yet exciting, one sizzling skillet at a time. Savory oatmeal was the breakfast that brought a touch of sophistication to the usually boring tables in the 1970s. Long before it became a regular brunch option, it stood out as an innovative way to enjoy this plain grain. It was trendy, it was everywhere. When you think of oatmeal, you think of what? A sweet little breakfast, right? Yes. But this was no regular oatmeal. Yes, it was usually seen as a sweet dish with brown sugar or fruit, but it got a whole new personality when savory ingredients were thrown into the mix. And all of a sudden, oats were paired with eggs, cheese, and veggies, turning a simple breakfast into something you might expect to find at an upscale cafe or restaurant. In an era when people were obsessed with healthy meal alternatives, oatmeal was a perfect fit. It was versatile and adaptable, plus it offered endless possibilities. Whether you choose to top them off with sautéed mushrooms, crispy bacon, or soft-boiled eggs, they offer great nutritional value and taste. What made savory oatmeal stand out back then is the same reason it's still popular today. It's the kind of dish that proves even the simplest ingredients can be transformed into something sophisticated with the right combination of flavors. We can say with confidence that it was ahead of its time, offering a savory twist to a breakfast staple that's still going strong today. Baked eggs in tomato cups quickly became the go-to breakfast for the health-obsessed in the 1970s. At a time when fresh produce was the main talk of the town, this dish perfectly embodied the era's love for wholesome ingredients. It was simple, nutritious, and, most importantly, it looked fancy enough to impress at brunch. Hollowing out a fresh tomato, cracking an egg into it, and baking it to golden perfection turned basic breakfast ingredients into a trendy, gourmet meal. Even when made at home, it gave the impression that you either put in a lot of effort or had a private chef prepare it. For those obsessed with eating clean, it was a win-win. Not only were you getting your protein and veggies in one go, but you were also supporting the fresh food movement with every bite. And let's face it, baked eggs in tomato cups gave you serious bragging rights at the table, allowing you to talk endlessly about farm to table long before it was cool. As you can see, a lot of these meals were quite ahead of their time and can be seen on restaurant menus to this day. Even if it seems simple, which it is quite a gourmet meal. For anyone striving to balance healthy eating with a bit of flair, baked eggs in tomato cups were the perfect way to do so. Again, something that's familiar to everyone, at least I hope it is. Banana bread became a beloved homemade breakfast in the 1970s, capturing the hearts of home bakers across the United States. It was the perfect solution for using up overripe bananas, and soon, every kitchen seemed to have a loaf baking in the oven. The rise of banana bread also spread the growing trend of baking at home, as people strived for comfort and simplicity in the kitchen. This was and still is the perfect dish to bake on a crisp fall morning. It is easy to make, with just a few ingredients necessary. Served warm with a cup of coffee, banana bread quickly became a staple of cozy mornings. It wasn't just breakfast, it was a ritual. Waking up early, baking a sweet loaf of banana bread, and enjoying it over coffee with your significant other. A true recipe for a cozy beginning of the day. Whether you tossed in some walnuts for a bit of crunch or added chocolate chips for an extra treat, banana bread had endless possibilities. One of its major advantages is its versatility. And let's not forget the irresistible aroma that filled the house while it baked, making it impossible to resist cutting a slice as soon as it came out of the oven. But don't eat it too quickly, or your stomach will be hurting for the rest of the day. Banana bread was more than just a tasty dish, it was a symbol of the home baking alongside pumpkin pies. Easy to make, delicious, and perfect with morning coffee, it became the go-to breakfast for families across America. It brought together nostalgia, simplicity, and a dash of homemade indulgence. Yogurt parfait became a favorite for everyone and anyone who was always in a morning hurry. Also, health-conscious eaters absolutely loved it, and it was a breakfast that looked as good as it tasted. Layered with yogurt, granola, and fresh fruit, it was a work of art in a glass cup. For those in the 70s looking to embrace the wellness craze, yogurt parfaits were the perfect balance of delicious and nutritious. You could indulge in them without any guilt, which made them a must-have for anyone who wanted to eat smart while still enjoying their food. Because I am sure all of you know that those healthy meals can be pretty tasteless. Yogurt parfaits, perfectly portioned and packed with protein, fiber, and vitamins, became the go-to option. It had everything you needed. Nutrients to give you strength and energy for the day, a nice look, dare I say, Instagram-worthy, before Instagram was even a thing. It was the breakfast that screamed, fancy but healthy. Plus, it was versatile. You could throw in whatever fruits you had on hand, sprinkle some nuts, and add a bit of honey. Whether it was eaten at home or on the go, the yogurt parfait quickly became a morning must-have. In a time when healthy foods were becoming trendy, it was the star of breakfast bowls, making the start of the day both fresh and flavorful. Almond croissants became the epitome of luxury in cafes. These buttery, flaky pastries reflected the strong French influence on the breakfast scene. This wasn't your ordinary croissant. It was sophisticated, almond-filled, which demanded attention. With its rich frangipane filling and a perfectly golden, crispy exterior, it became the treat of choice for those who wanted a little elegance with their morning coffee. In the 70s and 80s, as cafe culture began to rise, almond croissants stood out as the indulgent, slightly fancy option for anyone looking to elevate their breakfast game. It was the kind of pastry that made you feel like you were sitting at a Parisian cafe, even if you were just grabbing it from your local corner shop. Each croissant was topped with a dusting of powdered sugar and sometimes toasted almonds, making every bite pure elegance. For anyone wanting a taste of Europe without a plane ticket, the almond croissant was the perfect escape. Rich, decadent, and utterly satisfying, it became the go-to pastry for anyone seeking a luxurious breakfast or afternoon snack, one flaky, almond-filled bite at a time. While on the topic of sweets, we're coming up with everyone's favorite, cinnamon rolls. Cinnamon rolls were the indulgent breakfast treat that took the 1970s by storm, filling kitchens with the sweet, spicy aroma of cinnamon and sugar. Back then, they were the ultimate comfort food, a gooey, sticky way to start the day that made mornings feel like a celebration. Whether homemade or picked up from a bakery, cinnamon rolls offered a soft, warm center and a generous drizzle of icing that was impossible to resist. Fast forward to today, and these swirled delights have found their niche as a fall staple. As soon as the leaves start turning, cinnamon rolls come out. They became the go-to breakfast, perfectly paired with a hot cup of coffee or cider. Something about that cinnamon spice just screams cozy, making them a must-have for cool weather weekends. They're no longer just a breakfast option. They're an autumn ritual. Even though they're enjoyed year-round, there's something extra special about biting into a cinnamon roll when the air gets crisp. From their 70s glory days as the ultimate weekend indulgence to their current status as a fall favorite, cinnamon rolls have stayed timeless. It's a little slice of nostalgia wrapped in dough and cinnamon, proving that some breakfasts never go out of style. Chia pudding may be a trendy health food today, but it had its roots back in the 1970s when health movements had barely been a thing. At the time, chia seeds weren't exactly a household name in the United States, but those who were ahead of the curve knew these tiny seeds had serious nutritional advantages. But let's go even further into the past. Chia seeds are believed to have been used way back in the Aztec and Mayan civilizations, dating back as far as 3500 before Christ. Loaded with fiber, omega-3s, and protein, chia seeds were quietly making their way into the diets of health-conscious folks looking for ways to pack their foods with vitamins before it was cool. Chia pudding offered a creative way to transform these nutrient-dense seeds into a delicious dish. With just a bit of milk, or now plant-based alternatives, chia seeds transformed into a thick, creamy pudding that felt indulgent but was actually healthy. It was a dessert-like breakfast that offered health benefits without the sugar crash, so insulin levels stayed low. As the decades have gone by, chia pudding has gone from a niche health food to a mainstream breakfast option, topped with fresh fruit, nuts, honey, and yogurt. It's a great example of how the wellness trends of the 70s paved the way for today's superfood culture. It's nice to see that the breakfast choices of the wealthy in the 70s weren't all that different from what we enjoy today. From indulgent pastries to health-conscious bowls, these meals remind us that luxury has always been about enjoying good food. So, what's your favorite breakfast dish? And would you have loved the opportunity to dine like the rich in the 70s? If you would, like, subscribe, and see us in the next video.